What's going to happen with Pitt's running backs? How did some former Panthers do over the weekend? And is Pitt now fourth? Projected with the fourth best odds to win the ACC? Am I reading that right? We got a lot of things to cover, so we're going to hit as many topics as possible on this Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, welcome to the midweek edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's Wednesday, and I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, you find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and message boards to talk to other Pitt fans all day, every day, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Check out the website if you want to interact with other Pitt fans all the time. And then, of course, right here on YouTube, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our Pitt video content, these daily morning Pitt videos, a little bit of Pitt sports talk to get your day started. I know yesterday we went a little bit off topic, didn't stay entirely current with our discussion of some of the great games in the history of the River City rivalry, but the way I look at it, you wake up in the morning, you put on the Morning Pitt, and you get a little Pitt sports talk to start the day. And it might be the latest breaking news, it might be game previews, it might be recaps, it might be a walk down memory lane for those of us who like to wax nostalgic about the past. Either way, we give it a little bit of Pitt sports talk to get your day started. We have the live Panther-Lair show every Wednesday night. That's tonight at 8:30 p.m. Me and Jim Hammett will be together discussing the Wofford game, looking ahead to Cincinnati, and lots of other things. And then, of course, we have the live post-game shows, which are probably my favorite thing to do, even though it's going to be a late one this week with the Cincinnati game kicking off at, what time is it, 6:30, I think. It's going to be a late game, probably like or a late post-game show, I should say, probably like midnight or so. But that's fun. I like those late-night ones. We did one last year after the West Virginia game, after the Backyard Brawl, a Thursday night primetime game. I think we started at like 1:30 in the morning or something like that, and it was great. And we had a huge crowd of people online during a live stream on a Thursday night into a Friday at like 1:30 in the morning. It was awesome. And so we look forward to doing that again. It'll be fun on Saturday night. Win or lose, we'll have a lot to talk about. There's no question for sure. So you don't want to miss any of those things. Make sure you like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, I got like 5 different things I want to get to today. We're going to try and knock as many of them out as possible. I'm going to try and rank them in order of importance, but to me, they're all important, so who knows if I get this right. I want to start with the running backs, because I thought the running back usage was really interesting in the Wofford game on Saturday. By the carries, Daniel Carter led the way, 11 rushing attempts. He gained 65 yards and scored a touchdown. Sibo Flemister had 9 carries and also caught 2 passes. He had 27 rushing yards and 35 receiving yards. Rodney Hammond had 5 carries for 25 yards and 2 touchdowns. He caught a pass for 15 yards. And then Derek Davis carried the ball twice for 8 yards. Actually, Montrevious Lloyd had more carries than Davis. He had 5 carries for 20 yards and also caught a pass for 7 yards. Davis had 2 carries for 8 yards and was targeted on a pass, but he dropped that pass, so that did not reflect well on the transfer from LSU, the former Gateway standout, but that's neither here nor there. And the snap counts, according to Pro Football Focus, largely followed what the production numbers. I mean, looking at it real quick, Daniel Carter had 23 snaps, Sibo Flemister had 20, Rodney Hammond played 18, Montrevious Lloyd played 13, and Derek Davis played 7 snaps, offensive snaps we're talking about here. We're not talking about special teams. The question, of course, and I think we talked about it a little bit coming out of the game, but probably didn't dwell on it too much, is what it means going forward. I mean, is that the rotation going forward? The depth chart, for whatever that's worth, still lists Rodney Hammond as the starter, the starting running back, followed by Sibo Flemister or Daniel Carter, and then Derek Davis listed after those 3. But the question is, is what we saw on Saturday, where Daniel Carter got the start, and Daniel Carter played the most snaps, and Daniel Carter got the most touches, or at least the most rushing attempts, is that what we should expect to see going forward? I mean, Carter looked good. I don't think there's any question about it. Andre Powell said yesterday he was in the 240s, and now he dropped a lot of weight, and he's down to the 220s, and he sort of did that of his own volition. It's not like the coaches went to him and said, Daniel, you need to lose weight, you got to slim down, we need you to get smaller. And he did that because he wanted to do it, because he wanted to move better. And I think Carter even said during training camp, that he didn't like being that heavy. He didn't like being in the 240s. He was a player who was always in the 220s or lower, and he wanted to get back to that range and be able to move like he used to move when he was in the 220s. And so that's where he is now. And yeah, he looked good. I thought he looked really good in that game against Wofford. Bring up his rushing numbers real quick. According to Pro Football Focus, at least, Daniel Carter got 71 yards after contact, which is remarkable because he had 65 rushing yards on the game. Forced 6 missed tackles, had a long run of 22 yards, and ultimately, picked up 4 first downs on the ground, which was more than any other running back. I mean, he had more opportunities than any other running back, but he played well. I can't shake the feeling that Daniel Carter had the kind of game that Daniel Carter would have against an FCS opponent. And that's not to dismiss Daniel Carter's ability or, taking advantage of lesser competition. But I feel like, and I probably could look back and find examples of this, that oftentimes you see in these FCS games, particularly season openers, that there's someone other than the lead back who ends up with most of the carries and most of the work and most of the yardage and most of the production. And a majority of me feels like that's the case here, that Rodney Hammond is still the number one back for this team, and that Daniel Carter got the bulk of the work, and Montravius Lloyd got as many carries as he did, because and Rodney Hammond only got 5, because they're trying to be smart with Rodney Hammond, that they feel that he's their best back, and they've got to preserve him for the full season, and they need to, he needs to be healthy for as long as possible. And I don't buy into the injury-prone thing, but it's running back. That position, more than individual players, that position is injury prone with the amount of contact that you take. And so if you can lessen the contact or minimize the contact or the amount of hits that a guy is going to take, then that, should maximize his longevity, extend his longevity for the season. And so if you feel like Rodney Hammond's your number one back, then it makes sense to play it smart with him against Wofford. Let Daniel Carter carry the load. Let Montravius Lloyd get extended work. Let Sebo Flemister get a bunch of carries, and get Derek Davis involved a little bit. In the interest of minimizing the number of hits that Rodney Hammond has to take. But at the same time, that's my main thought. That's what I think the coaches are going for. And that's my own guess. That's not necessarily. Pat Narduzzi didn't call me last night and tell me that was the case. That's my thought on it, though. But Daniel Carter looked really good. It was against Wofford, but he looked good. He ran strong. He looked quick. He broke some tackles, which is what Daniel Carter should do. And Andre Powell said it yesterday, that even though he's down from the 240s to the 220s, he's still running with the same power, comparable power that he had when he was in the 240s. Weight-wise. And I thought he played well. I think he looked like a viable tailback option, which I would not have said about Daniel Carter at any point over the last 4 years. People have clamored for him here and there. I think part of it is we're in Pittsburgh and we love a fullback. I've not seen Daniel Carter as a viable tailback option for the last 4 years. I mean, he hasn't been built that way. He hasn't run that way. He hasn't played that way. He's been a fullback, and that's how it made the most sense to use him. But on Saturday, he looked more like a running back, more like a tailback than he has at any point in his Pitt career. I'm willing to keep giving him tries and attempts and opportunities. I really am. And I think Andre Powell is too. Powell said that they feel like they have three running backs they can win games with. That being Rodney Hammond, Daniel Carter, and Sebo Flemister, who I thought did some good work in the passing game on Saturday. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens this Saturday against Cincinnati. My guess, it's just a guess, is that Rodney Hammond starts, gets the bulk of the carries, 20-25 carries. Daniel Carter, Sebo Flemister do a lot of work. Montravius Floyd and Derek Davis might not even see the field on offense. That's my guess. It's very possible that this could be an ongoing competition throughout the week, let alone the month and the season, but particularly throughout this week. And we go into that game on Saturday, and Daniel Carter's the starting running back because he had the better week of practice. I personally don't think Carter and Hammond are close enough that a week of practice, moves one guy ahead of the other, but they might be. It might be closer than we think. I do have a fair amount of confidence in all three of those guys. I think the blocking scheme is good. I think it's a run-based offense, and I think they're good at running the ball, and I think those are three capable backs. So whether they go with Hammond, Carter or Flemister, I think they're going to get positive yardage and have a successful, effective running game. I still think Rodney Hammond is the best option, but that's just my opinion. The coaches might see it a little bit differently, but that's my guess, is that Hammond ends up starting on Saturday. But we see a healthy dose of Carter and even Flemister. Andre Powell said they don't have a third down back. They don't have a guy who just plays on third down or is better in that situation. But I think Flemister looked really good as a pass catcher, in addition to what he can do when he's taking handoffs. So I'd like to see more of him in that role, provided you're not giving up anything with any of those three guys when it comes to pass protection. You need to keep Phil Dracovic healthy in obvious passing situations, and you're going to need your best blocking back out there. So we'll see what happens there. I wanted to touch on this real quickly. That's the running back thing. I wanted to touch on this real quickly, just because we put it on the message boards. I put it on there yesterday, or it was might have been, what day was it? Monday afternoon. Just kind of a rundown of how the players who transferred out of Pitt did in week one. And I probably won't update this every week. I'll have other things to do, but I think it's interesting to catch up. They had 11 scholarship players who transferred out in the offseason. And I think it's interesting just to sort of see what's happening there and what those guys are doing. I mean, you probably saw about Keaton Slovis. BYU beat Sam Houston State 14-0. Slovis accounted for both touchdowns. He ran for one and threw for, or no, actually he ran for two. So you want to talk about your mobility and guys who can make plays with their feet. I mean, Keaton Slovis is out here rushing for 2 touchdowns. Vincent Davis had probably the best day of any of these guys who transferred away. He had a 69-yard run on the first play of the game, a touchdown run. He only carried the ball two more times and got 10 yards, but that play was a nice start. They played Bryant, so maybe Vincent Davis was being held back a little bit, kind of like I think Rodney Hammond was against Wofford. Four receivers transferred out: Jaden Bradley, Jalen Barden, Gavin Thompson, and Miles Alston. Those 4 guys, Bradley went to Charlotte, Barden went to Georgia Southern, Thompson went to UNLV, and Miles Alston went to Old Dominion. Those 4 guys, as far as I can tell, played a combined total of 6 snaps and caught 1 pass on 2 targets for 6 yards. And all of that playing time was Jalen Barden in Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern's 34-0 win over the Citadel. Bradley didn't play for Charlotte against South Carolina State. Gavin Thompson didn't play for UNLV against Bryant. And Miles Alston didn't play in Old Dominion's loss at Virginia Tech. I don't bring these things up to say see, those guys, should have transferred or anything like that. But I think it's interesting to follow up. To tell you the truth, I thought Jaden Bradley and Jalen Barden and maybe even Miles Alston would do well at their new homes. I thought transferring down a level, not necessarily to FCS, but down a level to sort of group of 5 out of the Power 5 conferences, I thought would be good for those guys. I think Bradley's a talented player. I've liked Barden for a long time, and I think Miles Alston can make some plays at that level. Old Dominion seemed like a good place for him. It doesn't even look like he played any snaps in that game. And that's disappointing, because I hope those guys would get an opportunity to get out and show what they can do. John Morgan, super senior defensive end at Arkansas, 56-13 blowout win over Western Carolina. He came off the bench, had 3 pressures and 1 tackle. Sam Williams played a little bit. He was a defensive end. He transferred to Murray State. Khalil Anderson played just on special teams for East Tennessee. And then Judson Tallender, probably, outside of Vincent Davis, Judson Tallender, who transferred to Akron. He was the player to be named later in the Kanate Munfield for Shockey Jacques Louis trade. Pitt had to offer a player to be named later. I mean, obviously none of that didn't actually happen, but it is funny how the Pitt-Akron connection sort of continues here. Judson Tallender playing for Akron. They lost at Temple 24-21, but Tallender started at corner, and he actually played corner. I went and checked out some of the film of the game just to make sure, because he was a safety at Pitt. He played corner. He had 5 tackles and 2 pass breakups. So shout out to Judson Tallender. He seems to have found his level, and he knew he felt like he wasn't going to get an opportunity here. He's probably right. He was playing safety here. He was behind Javon McIntyre. I mean, last year McIntyre and Tallender were both behind Brandon Hill. And McIntyre was the clear number 2 at boundary safety. And so Tallender decided, I'm going to move on and use my 6th year somewhere else. And I think he found a good spot, at least in the first week, playing safety and putting up some stats, getting some production, or playing corner, getting some production and being able to play. We do the opponent watch every week. We publish that on Panther-Lair.com. Yesterday, just kind of quickly running through it. I mean, the biggest games are the ones that you were probably already paying attention to. Florida State knocking off LSU with a monster game that I think everybody was impressed by. And then Duke on Monday night, upsetting Clemson at home. And I'm not going to get on board with Clemson's complete demise just yet, but it's not good. It's not good when you lose, when you're a top 10 team and you go on the road against an unranked team and you lose by 3 touchdowns. Now, they were in the red zone multiple times and came away with no points, 2 blocked field goals and 2 fumbles in the red zone. And so that's going to impact the outcome a little bit. But that offense just doesn't look scary like it has in the past. And whether that's because of the quarterback, whether it's because of the wide receivers, whether it's because of the offensive coordinator, and I think it's a combination of all 3. I'm actually more bullish on the OC and the quarterback than I am on the receivers. I think the OC and the quarterback can improve. I'm not sure about the receivers. I don't know if they have the killers at receiver that they've had in past years when they were as good as when they were really at their peak. That said, I mean, they're a talented enough defense to win 8-9 games. It would not surprise me at all if Clemson, I shouldn't even say 8. They're talented enough defense to win 9 games. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Clemson goes out and has a bad 10-win season. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if this offense has it figured out a little bit better by the end of the season than they have it right now. But it certainly didn't look good on Monday night. I don't think there's any question about that. And then the other, sort of notable game is Boston College losing to Northern Illinois in overtime. Feel bad for former Pitt assistant Jeff Hafley, the head coach at BC. He needs to. He needed a better result than that. He needed a better outcome than that in week 1. They lost to UConn last year, and now falling to Northern Illinois is a rough start to the season. And you wish the best for Jeff Hafley to turn it around and have a better run over these next few games to keep himself in good shape. Let's see here, a couple other things. Oh, check this out. So I was looking up Narduzzi against other head coaches. Obviously, he's facing Scott Satterfield this Saturday. Satterfield coaching Cincinnati. Satterfield was a coach at Louisville last year and in 2020 when Pitt faced them. So, you can do the math on that. Narduzzi has a 1-1 record against Satterfield. The Louisville game in 2020 being a Pitt win, last year being a Pitt loss. And so I was looking up the coaches that Narduzzi has faced, and he's coached against a lot of them. And there are a lot of guys who have winning records against Narduzzi, or guys that Narduzzi has never beaten, but only faced once. Like, he only faced Kirk Ferentz once. And yeah, he's 0-1 against Ferentz. He only faced Jeff Hafley once, and that was the 2020 game that we always reference. Mel Tucker, Brent Key, or Al Golden, Pat Fitzgerald, David Shaw, Steve Adazio, the Navy coach in 2015. A lot of these guys 1-0 games. There are only 5 coaches who are undefeated against Narduzzi over multiple games. And it's a pretty good list with like one notable exception. There's Brian Kelly, who's 3-0 against Narduzzi, beat him in 15, 18, and 20. Mike Gundy, obviously that 2-game series against Oklahoma State, he's 2-0 against Pitt. Dave Doran, good coach, he's 2-0 against Pitt. Manny Diaz is 3-0 against Pitt, or against Narduzzi. And then Larry Fedora, 4-0 against Pat Narduzzi. I'll never get over or understand the North Carolina problems from 2015 through 2018. I mean, last year, all right, I get it, but it's just ridiculous. Ultimately, if you look at the coaches who have coached multiple games against Pat Narduzzi, there's only 8 that have winning records against Narduzzi. There's those 5 I just mentioned, plus Mark Richt went 2-1 against Narduzzi. Justin Fuente went 3-1 against Narduzzi. I mean, Narduzzi won the he won in 18. Fuente won in 16, 17, and 19. I mean, 3-1 against Justin Fuente. because let me double check. I don't think he was still there in 2020. Now I'm questioning my own research, which I did all this research. Yeah, he was there in 2020 and 2021. What am I talking about? 3-1 against Fuente, or Fuente being 3-1 against Narduzzi, because Pitt won in 20 and 21. So Fuente and Narduzzi were tied. So there's actually 7 coaches with winning records against Pat Narduzzi in multiple games. The other one is James Franklin. So Franklin, Rick, Fedora, Kelly, Gundy, Doran, and Diaz are the 7 coaches who have a winning record against Pat Narduzzi head-to-head in multiple games. Otherwise, not too many coaches. I mean, there are a lot more coaches that Narduzzi is either tied with, like Satterfield, he's 1-1, or Dabo Swinney, he's 2-2, or Josh Heupel, he's 2-2. There are a lot more of those coaches than there are the guys that have winning records against Pitt. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything for the Cincinnati game on Saturday, but it's interesting because it's a pretty small group of guys who have a winning record against Narduzzi head-to-head in coaching. Justin Fuente is not part of that group. I don't know why I got that mixed up. Fuente was at Virginia Tech for 6 years, 2016 to 21. Tech won in 16, 17, and 19, and Pitt won in 18, 20, and 21. Some notable games in there, but we won't go down memory lane on that one. And then the last thing, this came out. Bill Connolly from ESPN does the S&P Plus rank ratings. I guess he would call them ratings. I don't think he would call them rankings, but as he says, they're a forward-facing ranking, a predictive ranking. And according to the latest S&P Plus Power 5 conference title odds, Pitt is 4th in the ACC. Florida State's at 29% chance of winning the conference. UNC is at a 14% chance. Miami's at 12%, and Pitt at 11% chance to win the conference. Comparables percentage-wise, Wisconsin is a 10% chance to win the Big Ten. UCF is 8% in the Big 12. Utah is 12% to win the Pac-12. Ole Miss, 7% to win the SEC. Tennessee is 13% to win the SEC. And the S&P Plus is based on, tempo-adjusted, opponent-adjusted, efficiency ratings. Like I say, it's predictive more than reflective. It's not about your resume as much as what you've done so far indicates about what you should be able to do. But, putting them right in that area. Look, if Pitt ends up finishing 4th in the ACC or anywhere in the top 4, maybe even top 6, I would say that's a pretty successful season. I would say certainly if they finish 4th in the ACC, and that's not entirely what this is predicting, but I would say if they finish 4th in the ACC, that's a pretty good season. But these S&P Plus rankings change, and often drastically week to week. So we'll see where they stand after this game against Cincinnati on Saturday. All right, had a bunch of topics we wanted to hit because we have some recruiting stuff on tomorrow's Morning Pitt, and then we'll have the mailbag on Friday. So wanted to knock a bunch of those things off the table. Can cross them all off here and move on with more stuff for you tomorrow and to wrap up the week. Make sure you like and subscribe. Of course, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then head over to the webpage and check it out. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, and recruiting, you find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and message boards to talk to other Pitt fans. Thanks for tuning in today. We appreciate it. Don't forget the live show tonight at 8:30 p.m. on Panther-Lair, the Panther-Lair show right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Tune in for that. We'll have a fun conversation. Then we'll be back again tomorrow morning for another Morning Pitt right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.